She felt the weight settle into her palms before the laughter fully reached her ears. Metal bit into skin. Gravel crunched under boots as someone shook their head and said, almost kindly, "You don't have to prove anything." The test had already been decided in their minds. And yet something in her spine straightened anyway. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're re-watching from. I love knowing who is listening. Her name was Leila Moreno, and strength had never been the thing people noticed first. They noticed her size. Compact. Quiet. The kind of person who disappeared in a line formation. On her first morning with the unit, the sun was barely up. Dust floating in pale gold sheets through the training yard. Steel frames loomed. Ropes hung slack. A block of equipment, awkward, brutal in its design, sat in the center like a dare. The test wasn't on the schedule. That was the point. Captain Rourke had suggested it with a shrug, eyes lingering a beat too long. The squad gathered. Murmurs rippling. Someone cracked a joke. Someone else stretched their shoulders. Leila said nothing. She rolled her wrists and breathed. One by one, they tried. 2 men together strained, faces red, boots slipping. The block didn't move. Another pair tried, then 3. Grunts echoed, short and frustrated. The metal scraped an inch and stopped, stubborn as a locked door. Laughter returned, softer now, edged with embarrassment. Rourke looked at Leila, not cruelly, almost curious. "You're up." She felt the familiar heat rise, old memories of gyms where eyes followed, of coaches who smiled politely and looked past her. She remembered her mother's hands, calloused from double shifts, lifting crates without ceremony. Strength, she'd learned, wasn't always loud. Leila stepped forward. The air felt thicker near the block. She crouched, fingers finding seams, testing balance. The metal was cold, heavy, unforgiving. She centered her feet and closed her eyes for half a breath. Not to pray, to listen. To the way her body lined up when she trusted it, she pulled. At first nothing happened. A whisper of doubt passed through the watching crowd. Then the block shifted. A low groan traveled through steel. Dust lifted. Gasps replaced laughter. She adjusted, breathed out, and lifted again. The block rose clean off the ground. Silence fell like a held breath. Someone swore under their breath. Someone else took a step back. Leila's arms shook, not with panic, but effort, honest and earned. She held it long enough for disbelief to turn into awe, then set it down carefully, respectfully, as if the weight deserved it. Rourke didn't speak. He nodded once. It wasn't an apology. It was something rarer. From that day, eyes followed her differently. But tests like that never end. They just change shape. Weeks later, on a mission that wasn't supposed to go sideways, they did. The insertion was smooth, night wrapping the valley in blue-black quiet. Radios whispered. The objective was simple. Retrieve equipment from a downed vehicle before daylight found it. They moved like a tide, practiced and precise. Then the ground gave way. A rumble. A shout. One of their own went down hard, pinned beneath twisted metal. The night filled with the sharp smell of fuel and fear. Time fractured into seconds that mattered. They tried to lift the wreckage. It wouldn't budge. The injured man avengered his teeth, breath shallow. He joked, because that's what soldiers did when pain scared them. "Guess I'm stuck," he said, trying to smile. Leila felt something settle in her chest. Not adrenaline. Resolve. They wedged bars, leveraged angles. Nothing. The metal groaned and refused. Dawn threatened the horizon, thin and merciless. Every second increased the risk. Rourke looked at her then, eyes sharp, voice low. Ideas. She didn't answer with words. She moved. The team cleared space instinctively, trust traveling faster than command. Leila planted her feet in the dirt, felt it cool and solid beneath her boots. She slid her hands under a bent frame, fingers slipping on oil, and braced her shoulder against a beam that had crushed hopes minutes earlier. Her breath came slow, controlled. She thought of the training yard, of the block, of all the moments people decided what she couldn't do. She thought of Evan's laugh, thin but brave. She thought of how strength, real strength, showed up when it was needed, and asked for nothing in return. She lifted. Pain flared white and immediate, but she rode it like a wave. Muscles burned. The world narrowed to the sound of her breath and the creak of metal protesting a new truth. Slowly, agonizingly, the frame rose. "Now!" someone shouted. Hands rushed in. Evan was dragged free, careful, urgent. As soon as he was clear, Lila let go. The wreckage slammed back into the earth with a finality that echoed down the valley. She dropped to one knee, chest heaving. Dirt clung to sweat. The night exhaled. It moved fast after that. Extraction clean. Dawn watched them leave, confused and empty-handed. Back at base, the story traveled ahead of her. Whispers turned to smiles. The squad gathered in the mess, quieter than usual. Evan raised his glass, eyes bright. To Lila, he said simply, "No embellishment, no jokes." Applause followed, not thunderous, but deep, earned. Later alone, Lila sat on her bunk and wrapped her hands. They trembled now, the aftershock of effort. She wondered, briefly, if it was right that she'd been tested at all, if proving herself had been necessary. The moral tension lingered. Strength shouldn't need a spectacle. And yet sometimes a moment changes the way people seen. Not just you, but themselves. Rourke found her there, posture easy. "I was wrong," he said. "No qualifiers, no excuses." She nodded. It was enough. The next morning, the training yard looked the same. Dust, steel, sunlight, but something had shifted. When new recruits arrived, nervous and bright-eyed, no one laughed when Lila stepped forward to demonstrate. They watched. They listened. Because courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it lifts quietly, steadily, until the impossible moves. And the weight we carry together is always lighter than the one we try to lift alone. If this story meant something to you, share where you're listening from. Subscribe to Whispered Words for more human stories of strength and resolve. And stay close, because the next story might remind you of a power you forgot you had.